Today, we're cooking 2 birds with 1 spice, Pappy's Blue Label seasoning. We'll cook 1 on a Lang and 1 on the Recteq pellet grill. It's time for TWW barbecue. Whenever time allows, I like to brine chicken. Brining can enhance the texture, the flavor, and the moisture level of the meat. I like to use a variation of Alton Brown's brine, starting with a gallon of chicken broth or stock, some peppercorns, allspice berries, a little candied ginger, bay leaves, brown sugar, and salt. There's so much solids in there that you really need to heat the solution up to get everything to dissolve. The heated liquid also pulls the flavor out of any of the herbs that might be in the mix. I let the solution cool before adding it to a bucket.
Dougie, move your face, dude.
Then I add ice and water. Now I can drop in the birds. I use something heavy on top to keep them submerged. You can brine anywhere from a few hours to overnight. You just got to make sure that it stays cold, so you either keep adding ice or, if you have the space, brine in the refrigerator. So let's fire up the smokers. I'll start with the Lang with a chimney full of blazing hot charcoal and some white oak shop scraps. The Recteq is a little simpler. Now let's talk spatchcocking. Not only is this the coolest word in the English language, it's also a great way to cook chicken. Flip the bird around so that the little butt flap is facing up, grab the butt flap, and use kitchen shears to cut along the spine on one side. Now repeat that process on the other side. I'll admit that there are some cooking tasks that are more effective than others at reminding us what it means to be a real carnivore, and ripping the spine out of a chicken is one of them. But doing so is well worth it as the chicken cooks faster and more evenly. Flip the birds over and try to break the wishbone by flattening it out. Now there are 3 things I like to do to get a nice crispy skin. The first, probably the most important, is drying the skin with paper towels. You really want it as dry as possible. Too much water and it just steams the skin, causing it to be soft and relatively unappetizing. The second thing we need is oil. Olive oil, canola oil, whatever. Just give the whole chicken a nice sensual rub down. The third thing is heat, and we'll talk about that later. Now for the seasoning. Today's recipe is sponsored by Pappy's Fine Foods, but believe me when I tell you, this stuff is good. I'm using Pappy's Blue Label seasoning, which is the less salt variety. With less salt, I can use more of the seasoning, giving me a nice distribution across the skin. So one bird goes on the Recteq with the temp probe in the breast, and the other gets the same treatment on the Lang. Target cooking temp is about 375, but you could go higher if you wanted to. The Lang is a low and slow beast, and I find it a little bit trickier to get it up to roasting temps. Experienced pitmasters know that some woods burn hotter than others. In my experience, oak burns pretty damn hot, so I'm throwing in oak splits to keep the temp up. Alright, so let's talk seasonings and rubs. So what we're using today is the Pappy seasoning, the less salt version. They also make it salt-free, and then the original. Now last week, I used this stuff on some chicken, and it was absolutely fantastic. The problem was, I applied too much, so it was just a little bit too salty. So this week, I'm going to try this guy and probably apply about the same as I did last time, because what this really comes down to is the difference between a seasoning and a rub. If you use rubs all the time and you switch to a seasoning, you will probably over season. So if you look at these two here, right, the one on the right, that's actually seasoning. It's Pappy's Choice. This one is a rub. So you can see it's more coarse texture, bigger granules. The seasoning is going to be a lot more fine, right? And it's also usually going to have more salt, so you can't put as much on the surface. You don't need as much to flavor the meat. But it's super important to know what you're using, what the salt content is, because that's going to help you, get a better final product. And if you have to, stick your finger in it and taste it. That will give you an idea how much salt's in there. I don't know if you guys can hear the heavy breathing, but we have a guest. To add some additional flavor, I add a little bit of Pappy's Blue Label to some melted butter that I clearly heated way too much. Now each bird gets a light basting of the yum yum juice. And a little more wood for the Lang. Man, I love a good controlled fire. The smaller Recteq bird is done, so I'll pull that one off. And I'm looking for an internal temp of 165 in the breast. And check out that skin, crispy, golden brown, full of flavor. Shortly after, the Lang bird is ready. And just in time too, because it started to rain. To go with the chicken, I'm grilling up some zucchini using Pappy's veggie seasoning and a little bit of olive oil. This was a last-minute addition, so I'm just using the gas grill to sear each face. Time to carve. I usually remove the legs and thighs, then the wings. Then I carve along the breastbone to remove the entire breast in one shot, or most of it anyway. I then slice up the breast into single yummy portions. Now, I'm the only one who knows which bird is which, so which one tastes the best? Which cooker will reign supreme? Will my kids ever eat the food that I put in front of them? We may never know. So that was some chicken. That was some good chicken. I want to thank Pappy's Fine Foods for sponsoring this episode. The Blue Label, less salt version was definitely the way to go on the chicken, and I think in the future that's exactly what I'm going to use. So both birds, fantastic right out of the gate. Now, what was the difference between the Lang and the Recteq? Well, the difference wasn't that great. Most of us felt that both of them were on the same level. But for me and Nicole, we both felt that the Lang just had a little bit more of the edge, a little bit more smoke flavor, and in both cases, the skin was really, crunchy, not real soft or anything. They both cooked up really well, but the Lang had a little bit more moisture in it. And sometimes, with brining with a different sized bird, sometimes these things can make a difference. The one on the Recteq was a smaller bird, so maybe it was a little bit drier. It also finished earlier. So, moisture, I'm not going to make any major claims about that. Just flavor in general. Nicole and I both felt the Lang had the edge just by a little bit. But man, it was so close, and as far as Mom goes, she thought that they were both fantastic. I think she was just happy to not have to cook dinner herself. So she was just thrilled to have chicken that she didn't cook. So here's the thing, the Lang takes so much more work to run it, so much more effort, and at a high temp like that, you're not really getting a ton of smoke flavor. It's high temp and a short cook period, and that's fine for chicken. I think if we were talking, low and slow, you might see more dramatic differences between the pellet smoker and the offset, but at these high temps, they were so darn close. Both of them were delicious, but I do give the edge to the Lang, and Nicole agreed with me. So there's that. I know you can't taste it, so what we thought about it is almost irrelevant, but if you trust my taste, there you go. That's what we did. So thanks again to Pappy's Fine Foods, and we'll see you guys next time.